Hi, welcome everyone. I'm John Martell. I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and it's my distinct privilege to introduce our guests for our panel today, Analytics in Action. First, we have Shane Battier, former NBA player. Sue Bird, current point guard for the Seattle Storm. Jeff Van Gundy, former coach and current ESPN broadcaster. And last, Dean Oliver, Vice President of Data Science at True Media. Our panel will be moderated today by Kevin Arnovitz, a basketball writer at ESPN. And the format of the panel is going to be 45 minutes of discussion, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. If you'd like to submit a question for Q&A, please open up the Guidebook app, use the hashtag #AnalyticsInAction, and submit your question. The ones with the most favorites, retweets, will get sent to Kevin to use at the end. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Thanks. We are doing player analytics here. First, I want to take inventory of where we are in this movement, and then hopefully, if there's time, peer into the future a little bit. I'll start with an anecdote. In 2011 in Miami, I was hanging out with a member of the Memphis Grizzlies staff, and you were with the Grizzlies at that point, and we stumbled upon you at a local restaurant. You were watching the NCAA tournament by yourself, eating dinner, and the staff member said, "Watch this," and he introduces us, we go up, and he says to you, "Name the 3 players in the league who are most likely to turn down a screen on a high pick and roll." And Shane immediately reels off Derrick Rose, who's number 1. I forget who number 3 was, who you also got. You missed Earl Boykins. So, but it was kind of a demonstration on how much you use this stuff and value this stuff. So I guess my first question to you is, when you look back now on your career, how much did using this data affect your career? How much did it contribute? Was it significant? Was it marginal?
I believe it was extremely significant. And dare I say it changed the course of my career. And before I got to Houston and played with Jeff, I played the game of basketball. And I thought I knew the game of basketball, but it wasn't until I went to Houston and learned sort of how the sausage is made in terms of the data and what actually wins and what actually loses. And it completely changed my thought of how I looked at the game. I looked at it from a totally different lens. And I believe that as I got older and a little slower, a little less athletic, and the bar was already very low, Kevin, my understanding and my ability to think the game and think in data terms allowed me to stay in the game probably longer than I probably should have.
So, Sue, same question to you. My sources inside the Seattle Storm say you came to this stuff later.
Yeah.
How much has it had an effect on your performance?
Definitely came into it later just because it really hasn't existed. Even now, there's not that much data in the world of women's basketball, but what you can learn and use, just like Shane said, it can change who you are as a player and what you do out there. And I think, again, the bar was low for myself as well. So as I've gotten older, maybe a little slower, the mind has definitely gotten faster. So I try to just take in as much information as I can that I know will help myself, but also help my team. Whether it's on defense, who turns down screens. I don't know if I know that answer for WNBA stuff, but I know who likes to go left and right for sure. So just little things like that. And if you can get an edge, any little tiny edge, and your brain has the ability to use it, not every player can say that, unfortunately, I don't see why you wouldn't want to maximize that. So that's kind of where I am in my career.
Yeah, I think one of the recurring themes of this conference the last few years is, listen, there's no lack of good information. The trick with player analytics is getting the players to buy in. How do you communicate it? How do you filter that information? You have to be pretty selective. One thing players will tell me is, hey, look, I'm not denying that it's useful information, but I work on instincts. And you start introducing this variable to me, given the speed and complexity of the NBA game, you're going to paralyze me. Whatever advantage you think I'm going to have, I'll forfeit by overthinking. And so, Jeff, as a coach, how would you impart this information to players in 2016?
I'm first puzzled. How do they ask those questions by Twitter? He gave these, like, you press this, you do this, you hashtag that. What is that? How do you get the question?
I'm like last in the league in social media.
Okay, I just don't have any idea what he just talked about up here. I'm just still puzzled by that. But to get to your question, I think it's relatively easy. Dumb gets you beat, right? So like when you say to me that there's a player who either can't incorporate information, whether it's detailed like Shane wants or very rudimentary game plan sort of stuff or remembering sets or whatever, intelligence is undervalued in our league. And so I think just like you train the physical body, you have to train the mind too to be able to take in information and use it. And I don't think that you're going to make somebody's feet slow by trying to give them information. I think it leads to anticipation, which helps the slower player actually be a step quicker. So I think repetition, just like physical repetition, mental repetitions are equally as important. And I don't think nowadays that is given as much weight because we're always talking about, getting them off their feet. I think it's very important, and I think it's always repetition.
But it's a sliding scale, right? I mean, when you look back at the 2009 article that Michael Lewis wrote on Shane's tactics, I mean, you're looking at every zone on the floor, and is that going to weigh down the backpack of certain guys? Do you have to be selective with certain players can absorb certain kinds of information?
Well, I used to get that stuff from Darryl. It's like a volume, right? And so I looked at it. I still remember we're going to L.A. We're on the bus going to shoot around. And after I had looked at it, Shane used to sit, like everybody sits always in the same spot. So he was like 2 behind me. And I said to him, hey, I looked at this shit. Kobe's good. So you better be with it tonight. So, that is coaching in the NBA. But I think, like when I coach Ewing, he would say, hey, listen, don't give me that shit. I'm going to bust his ass. Give me the ball in the left block. And that was good too, So I think you have to play to the personality, what they want, try to make them see the value in information. But also, as a coach, you got to filter out the garbage. And there's a lot of garbage that doesn't help you win. So I think you have to decide what information gives you the best chance to win and impart that.
What's an example of garbage?
Like, for instance, I don't need to know the percentage. Like, I can watch on film and say, like you said, Derrick Rose turns down the screen. Now, I would have to look at that and say, does he turn down the screen and reject the screen? Or are they trying to keep him away from the screen by forcing him, like in a down situation or, ice, whatever you want to call it? To me, maybe he's not rejecting the screen as much as how they're game planning for him. So I think there's that.
Free throw defense.
Right.
Free throw defense. Maybe the most worthless stat in all of sports. They are number 1 in free throw defense. The team shoots the lowest percentage from the free throw line against them.
That was on scouting reports?
That was actually on a scouting report.
Well, and also it's in the NBA stats they put out.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I never gave that to you.
No, and when we did that well, we tried to say that's our system. Because that's another thing you always try to say.
Yeah, that's our
Anything that works is a system.
Yes.
Yeah, it's system. It's not players, it's a system. Anything that doesn't work, it's those damn players screwing up my system.
All right. So now, you're the person who develops this information. I mean, you're the guy who mines it. What would be your ideal way of communicating to players? I mean, you go generally through a player development coach. You want to pass all this information, then it goes to the player if the player development coach decides it's useful. Would you prefer to have unmediated access to players, the ability to have office hours or whatever it is? No. I mean, what would be your ideal when you're working at a team to get players to buy in?
It depends upon the role. If I think one of the things about working with a coaching staff is the coaching staff is with the players 180 days. They know so many things from day to day that you don't necessarily pick out of the stats. So if I were with the coaching staff 180 days, I would talk to the players as well. But I had other roles. And in that case, I would communicate with the coaching staff. I would not give a stat like this. It was a page and a half. That's because in an NBA season, you've got a day of rest, maybe 2 days. And I tried to distill those thousands of numbers down to the things that were relevant. I mean, who to stop, how to stop them, those kind of things. And I tried to put them in basketball language. The player development stuff you're talking about, that's, in my mind, a lot of that's kind of preseason stuff. Preseason, okay, these are the things you want to work on over the course of the whole year. You work with the coaching staff. And I may talk more to the players in that situation. These are the things that you want to do to make yourself better, not only for us this year, but down the road. And that, hopefully, you've already communicated with the coach on that as well.
All right, Shane, there was a sense that, in 2009, you were sort of a unicorn, that there just weren't a lot of people doing this. And this is a question both for Sue and Shane. How much of an uptick has there been? How many players have we gone from a very small minority to, in some form or fashion, the majority of players are really referring to this information, using it to enhance their performance, or are we still sort of in the seminal phases right now?
I don't think we'll ever know, because it's still not cool to be hip to the math.
Really?
Still not cool. Even though a lot more players use it, they're much more loath to admit that they're into the math, because there is still a stigma in the locker room that, oh, you're one of those math guys. That ain't cool. But I play with guys who were taking a peek at my scouting report. They walk real slowly by my locker and sort of peek over at some of the numbers, and it's much more. I would say still less than 50%. But that's a heck of a lot more than when I first started doing this.
Oh, it's even less than that in the women's game. I think where we're seeing it more in the women's game is from a team perspective. So like building a scouting report. I think at some point you're playing against players where they always say, good offense beats good defense. It's kind of like a thing. So you just want to put yourself in the, depending how you look at it, the highest percentage situation for you. So as a team, I know my team in Seattle, the way we guard pick and rolls is almost 100% based on numbers and on stats. And it doesn't always work out, but you just want to have the opportunity to make it hard on the other team. So I don't really see it as much in individual. I mean, it's not talked about at all, to be honest. I mean, corner threes, layups, free throws, and then
but that's progress, right? I mean,
Yeah,
But
to have
look,
an awareness.
It boils down to the same things that happen on the playground, all right? Send that guy left. He's got no left hand, right? That's the thing we're talking about. Same thing we all grew up doing on the playground. Make that guy go left. He can't go left. He can't finish left. And so that's the way you have to explain it to players. For me, there were certain things that I didn't like done to me. I didn't like it when people made me go left, or really made me dribble. I didn't want to dribble. I just wanted to catch and shoot, all right? So my mindset was, if I hate that, I'm gonna do that to my opponent. I got a lot of play for doing the hand in the face thing. Guess what? I didn't like that. So if I didn't like it, I know Kobe doesn't like it, although he'll never admit it. And so the whole game plan is to do things that guys aren't comfortable doing. And that's the way I explain it to my teammates. I remember talking to LeBron, and we had a game against Oklahoma City. And there's a pretty significant split at the time where Kevin Durant wanted to shoot over his left shoulder, or his right shoulder in the post versus his left shoulder over the post. And I said, LeBron, Durant doesn't want to go over his left shoulder on the post when he's posting up on the left block, okay? And why that's important, and the split was pretty significant. I told him, look, if you do something on the floor and you don't have success, every player is the same. You lose confidence. You lose confidence. And so I said, look, make him go over his left shoulder first 2 times in the post and see what happens. He misses both shots. And all of a sudden, he's out of his comfort zone and really, really wants to get to his right shoulder, which you're already playing. You got him mentally. You got him in a box, and that's all you want. You've gained that mental edge by doing something that he doesn't want to do. And that's what the numbers are reinforce. And all of a sudden, LeBron is a fan now. He's willing to listen.
I think one of the challenges with that, though, is knowing when your own guys have to do something that puts them out of their own comfort zone to put the other guys out of their comfort zone. And that's the balance that a lot of times I ended up having to do. Distill, what are we good at in order to take away what they're good at? Because that's really a hard balance. And there are analysis to do that. And that's the stuff that you try to filter out before it gets to you guys.
Yeah, like for instance, there are moments when playground sensibility diverts from empirical data.
Yeah.
And I guess those are sort of the toughest moments, maybe to get a buy-in.
Yeah.
It seems to me like to the extent that you want to incentivize usage of this stuff for your players, there's a new problem in the league, which is how do you beat the Warriors and how do you beat the Spurs? And these are two teams that really rely, I mean, whether it's rest and recovery, whether, which isn't, and I want to get to that later, which is a player analytic. I mean, we're now, I think the next phase is, hey, don't shoot from there, is, hey, do this with your training. What's your hydration level, your biometrics. But to the extent that, and I'm wondering, you know, to the extent that Russell Westbrook needs to do certain things to his game, and there's not a guy who works more on instinct than Westbrook, and you wouldn't want him not to. The thing is, hey, if you want to beat Golden State, if you want to beat San Antonio, you are going to have to gain a competitive advantage that you wouldn't otherwise have. And I'm just wondering now, are we at a phase where, hey, that's incentive enough?
Well, I think that you have to get players who don't talk that winning's important, but that winning is important. Everybody knows what to say. Very few are committed to doing what it would take to make those changes. And I think coaches are looking for any advantage. So I think when people get like saying they're not analytically in the movement or whatever that idea is, I think every coach is looking for advantages, and then you just need players who are A, good enough, which that's hard enough to do, and then B, willing to make whatever necessary changes have to be made to give themselves the best chance to win, and still, most likely, aren't going to be able to beat Golden State.
And there's a difference between beating them in the regular season and beating them in the playoffs. Because one thing about the regular season, when you have no time to prepare, the players know their next opponent a little bit, but then they go play another team. In a 7-game series, the players actually get to know things really well about the opponent. And then it comes down to a lot of coaching adjustments. They've figured out what we're trying to do in this first game, so now they're going to adjust. How do we adjust back? And that's a whole different set of analysis, and it counts on smart players and the smart coaching adjustments.
Well, something I've been thinking this whole time, just to touch back on what Jeff said, it's all based on your roster. I mean, and sometimes you don't have control of that. I mean, you do to a certain extent at the beginning of the season, but as it goes, yeah, you'd love to have all the smart players and all the really talented and smart players, but sometimes you got to work with what you have, and that's not always easy. So what you might want to accomplish to beat, I mean, I don't have the problem of having to beat Golden State or the Spurs, thank God, but if you're trying to beat them, yeah, you might have the perfect formula. I mean, to bring it back to the WNBA, which I'm just going to continue to do, you know, we had to play, one of the teams right now is Minnesota. It's the toughest team to play against, and we had to play them in the playoffs. I actually was injured this year, so it wasn't me, but we figured out quickly. They had this one player, her name's Janelle McCarville, you probably wouldn't even know it, who 90%, it was like some crazy number of offense went through her, just as a facilitator. So we were like, all right, we're going to try and deny her, and she's a post player, just deny her at the high post, don't let her be the facilitator. Now what happened was we had success, we ran out of talent at the end. So it's like this sliding scale and all these moving parts of trying to get it to piece together, to have the smart player, to have the talented player. And that's when you have the great teams, when you can have that great combination, but you don't always have control over that when it comes to building a roster.
Yeah, how much is personal technology helping? I mean, the iPad at the locker, you're seeing more players, you know, have this stuff right at their, is it helping to sort of communicate this?
I certainly have seen it, and certainly a lot of the ones who are very visual, they use it.
You only have so many hours in the day. You talk about preparing for a game. You know, everyone has a routine that that is the exact same every single night, home, away. You know exactly by the clock on the wall what you should be doing at that time. So there's only so much information that you can take in. And again, what Jeff said was it's about practice, and you have to make that a fabric of your routine that it becomes very, very clock-like, workman-like, and it becomes part of your routine. But there's just not enough time for everything.
So you had an article published yesterday in the Players Tribune, and something struck me, and I wanted to read this. The disparity between NBA data, even data across all male sports, and WNBA data is glaring. Analytics generally is still very male-centric. It's interesting. One critique of, if you want to call it a movement or this segment of the industry, is that it's not deliberately exclusionary, but probably not as diverse as it ideally should be. How far behind do you think women's sports is in this particular realm, and why?
Right. Well, a lot of what that article was about was to start a conversation, right? I mean, there are things that you can't get around, which are a big part of the reason. The WNBA is only 20 years old. I don't even know how old the NBA is, because to me, it's just always been there. It's a given. So, I mean, we're not in the same world even with a lot of these male sports. We're getting there. We're growing. And a lot of it has to do with, popularity, media, sponsors, TV time. I mean, there's a ton of things that are affecting even data. And so the fact that it's male-centric just means we're catching up. We're a little behind. The male sports have been doing this for a lot longer. And another part of that article, it's probably my favorite part, is talking about the fantasy stuff. And it's interesting, because even women will know like an NFL player's name. And I'm like, how the hell do you know that? It's like, oh, he's on my fantasy team. I'm like, there's no other reason other than it's gonna affect the money she wins at the end of the month in the pool. But it becomes a part of your normal conversation. And that's where I think in terms of data and stats and all of the stuff we're talking about for women's basketball, I would love to get to that point where it's a part of the conversation.
What's funny is 16 years ago, just a quick note on WNBA, 16 years ago, there was a project on defensive analytics that was done in the WNBA because the WNBA gave us access. I could get people into games to chart defense. Kevin Pelton, one of the writers for ESPN, he was involved in that a long, long time ago, too.
One thing I always wondered, what if the person who was imparting this information to players was a former player? What if it was someone who looked like them? What if it was someone who shared their experience? Do you think there would be a completely different level of receptiveness?
No question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Jeff, would that help bridge a gap? I mean, would that, to the extent that there might be distrust or skepticism?
See, I never sensed that there was distrust. I thought there was disinterest in that they weren't, they were going to rely on the coaches to whittle it down and tell them. So I don't think they have to know maybe what Shane knew about, like, all right, the number, why we're forcing him left. We're just, listen, at this point on the floor, we need to get him going left, and you're going to be held accountable. And going to Shane's thing about Kevin Durant, so if he goes to his left shoulder, if you're a coach and you tell, hey, we're going to make Durant shoot over the left shoulder in the post, and he makes his first two, you have to have the trust with your team that that's on me. That's not on you. That's on me. I'm saying that. That's how we're doing it. I think that's a bigger issue than just getting them to do it. You can get NBA players, for the most part, to me, they want to be told what to do, how to do it, until it doesn't go right. And then you've got to eliminate that conflict by telling them, those buckets, if we're guarding them the way we say we're going to guard them, those are on me.
Right, and this speaks to...
Don't miss that point.
Right.
That may be the most important thing that's said the entire weekend. And Jeff's mantra was always, let the plan fail you, don't fail the plan. Let the plan fail you, don't fail the plan. And Jeff, more than any other coach that I played for, here's where the love fest begins, took responsibility. He'd be the first to say, you know what, bad game plan, boys, my bad. Won't happen again. And as a player, if you know you have a coach that's willing to take accountability, you're so much of a freer player. You have the freedom to be more instinctive, to follow the game plan, to play with energy and enthusiasm versus questioning the game plan, questioning, am I going to get hammered in the post-game presser, because Curry scored 50 on me. So let the plan fail you. Do not fail the plan.
Right, and this speaks to the final scene of that 2009 piece on you, which is you're guarding Kobe that night.
Process.
Your process versus his role. Like, you got him in that final shot
Process.
to go exactly where you wanted him to go, and he hit the shot.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, for me, I live with the result. I never fretted. I never looked at the box score at the end of the night and judged myself on whether I had a good game or a bad game. I knew whether, but by the shots that my opponent took, whether I did my job or not. If he shot 12 free throws, I did not do my job. If he lived at the rim, I did not do my job. If he made a bunch of dribble jumpers, I did my job. Carmelo Anthony scored 50 points on me in a game, all right? He had 0 paint points. You know how hard that is? You know how hard that is? 0 paint points, and had a 50 ball on my head. All right? After the game, people were absolutely, crushing me. And I said, guys, I did what I was supposed to do. I followed my game plan to a T. He just had a game that was, so outside the standard deviation. I can live with that. But again, it's having faith in the process and knowing that when I see him again, it's going to even out. And he did. He went like 7 for 28 next time I saw him. So overall, the numbers always even out. You can't get caught up in a single game or even a couple games.
One area we're seeing where players are really embracing what we would call player analytics is training, is health, is biometrics. Tom Haberstroh had a great article in a recent issue of the magazine about Kawhi Leonard, and that you can attribute he attributes much of his improvement to sort of paying attention. And we're talking about, we're talking about sleep, we're talking about nutrition, we're talking about, hey, how can I improve my jump? And there are training mechanisms to do this. I was talking to one of these sports scientists who said, what we're finding is a guy closing out on a shooter. We usually say, oh, that's effort or awareness. And what we're finding is, no, it's actually horizontal force. And, that's the number one predictor. It's, it's how can you create force in that horizontal plane? And I think what we're going to find in the next generation is, to the extent players want to improve that particular skill because they're perimeter defenders, because the defense demands that that's something they'll train during the summer or during the season. And I'm wondering, Sue, in your experience, is a player who might not pay attention or want to hear about, hey, I need to move that shooter to that spot of the floor, there are increasing receptiveness to these biometrics.
Oh, absolutely. So that's definitely happening, especially in the women's game. I think what do coaches always say? Control the controllables. And so these are things you can control. You can control what you eat. You can control how much sleep you get to a certain degree. In terms of the closeout, yeah, there's definitely, certain mindsets out there. I mean, I don't know about you, I'm assuming. We're in the same generation. You're taught to slide, sliding's the fastest way, but why not run? Isn't running faster than sliding? So in certain ways, I know recently it's been taught for me to close out, and instead of trying to slide, why not turn your hips and actually run? And then beat them to the spot that way. So there's all different things, and I think, again, if you can get an edge, why not? My team recently, we don't do shoot around anymore. And our schedules are different than NBA, which is I'm sure a lot of what you hear. We don't have the charter flights, so we're not flying out right after the game. We're getting up the next morning. So in a back-to-back situation, we play at like 7, you're done at 9. I mean, maybe you go to bed by 1 or 2.
Maybe.
Adrenaline, it's all adrenaline. Maybe. And then you're up for like a 6, 7 a.m. flight to play the next day. So to not have shoot around this past season changed my world. I mean, I didn't realize how lacking in sleep I was until we cut out shoot around. And it's like night and day difference. So even just that one little change with our sleep pattern, I feel so much better.
Jeff, if if your sports science people came to you and you're the head coach and said, listen, we want to try this season. When a player checks into the training facility in the morning, he spits into a cup, and we do some jump data, put him on a 1.5-foot box and, sort of see how he absorbs that jump and bounces. And, this we'll get his hydration levels, we'll get his cortisol levels.
What does cortisol do?
Cortisol kind of, it basically, it reduces stress. Sure. If your cortisol level is high, your kind of nervous system is not where you would want it to be.
Okay.
And by the way, we're going to also, that information will help determine how much rest and recovery this player needs. If that jump isn't where we want it, it might say, hey, this is a day where we do shooting drills instead, rather than 5-on-5. How would you be cool with that? Implementing a program where your players are spending 10, 12 minutes in what might be seen as invasive techniques to increase their performance?
I think it depends on how the players feel about it, too. Sports science, it's interesting. I just read an article, I think it was by Tom, about the 76ers. And the way it was promoted, you would have thought they were winning. No, you know what I mean? Like, they're doing everything right except winning. And so the process is important, but the result that you get is actually more important. So I would be up in the air. Like, you can't have what's best for each individual sometimes outweigh what's best for the team. Sometimes, even if Shane's cortisol is high, mine is higher. And we need to practice so that we actually win a game versus like we're the most rested team. You do not get a medal at the end of the year, we're most rested. And how about this? I read this great article by Tim Grover, the guy with the Bulls, and he said, and this was great for me because I've always thought some of this is utter bullshit, okay? He said, when you say rest, it's not minutes played or even necessarily practice. Rest is sleep. And even if you give a guy off a game or a practice, if he's out at the club until 4, that's not rest. So guess what? Unless they're willing, I hate the guys, and I had some good guys, Sura, Barry, Wesley, who were out all night and then would come to practice, but they didn't ask off. Now you got guys who want to go out all night and say, oh, I'm tired, so I get a little box. How tired are you? I'm tired. Hell yeah, you're tired. You just were out all night. So, like, nothing can overcome what's best for the team. It's got to be about the team. I don't want to hear, like, I don't need a sleep doctor to tell me, hey, go to bed, get 8 hours sleep. Or you're thirsty, drink water. The shit, I mean, like, that's important. Like, I don't understand this stuff sometimes. It's like, some of the stuff that is obvious, if you're willing to do it, you do it. So the sleep part, yeah, get rest. So Grover's point was, stop playing video games until 2 and smoking and stop going to the clubs. Well, that's rest, and let's practice.
Can I offer a counterpoint on Philadelphia? Look, you can be terrible and not build an infrastructure as an organization, or you can be terrible and build an infrastructure with.
But we're saying that infrastructure, this is my thing, and I'm not saying they don't have the right one. I'm saying, it's not that I'm not criticizing Philadelphia, but I see some teams in our league getting criticized for actually winning, and I see some teams getting praised for losing. And a lot of it is how the media can be manipulated too. But the point is that I just don't get where we get to this point where they send Embiid to, I don't know, someplace where they speak French in the hospital. Qatar?
Yeah.
Okay. Qatar. I don't give a shit about that. I want Embiid to play. Like, I want him to actually play games where we can win. Now, he may be able to do that better from Qatar, but I want him to actually play in America and and play. And so I know, listen, I know.
Wouldn't a sensible training regimen maybe enable his playing?
Has it?
Well, I mean, this is a new program. I mean, this is a new program. We've got to get this guy healthy.
Well, no, but
we're
I'm
learning
just saying,
things
and I'm
about
not
the
saying,
human body.
you can do everything right, and maybe, and I've had this with Yao Ming, right? You know, maybe he's just, his body is not structured to play NBA basketball. The only thing I'm saying is, you say it's the right infrastructure, or the article says it. Who says it's right? Like, who determines that? Like, if you say, if you're politically correct or basketball correct now, you say, I'm all about sports science, I'm all about rest, and then throw out another cliche, pace and space, right? Even though San Antonio is one of the lowest pace teams in the league, but people would say, you just say, Miami too. I think Eric came up with that pace and space, and then they played slow, right? So I just think sometimes we're not paying attention to the actual results. We're paying attention to what we want to be true.
Well, hold on. Golden State and San Antonio are teams that are implementing this stuff better than anyone.
Well, we don't know that, though.
We kind of do.
How?
I mean,
Because Curry makes 40-footers? It's not because his ass is
no,
like
but a guy with,
at night
a guy
and
with
not
really
eating
bad
candy.
ankles, who I think some people speculate might be out of the league because of those ankles, has completely changed
So you're
his training
saying
regimen.
Golden State and San Antonio, but we just said that Philadelphia was doing a great job at the two.
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think you can be a crappy team,
Right, that's my
build an
point.
infrastructure.
But you don't have, who's to say what infrastructure is right and wrong? I would say to you that there's a lot of teams that are doing things right. They may not be doing it the same exact ways, but they're doing it right. Like, who's judging? Like, it's like the use of stats or analytics. Who's using it right? Like, I think everybody's using it pretty right. For them, I mean, I don't think there's, we're like in this judgment mode. They're more into sports science and that. Everybody's into health. My thing is, why are some teams hurt then? Even if they have the right, like Philly, Okafor, Embiid, these guys are hurt. So is it the person or is it the structure? What is it?
Is it the person failing the process or the process failing the person?
I don't know.
And we don't know. Yeah.
And this whole prediction of like injuries, I would rather people say, we really have no idea. We're trying our best, but we don't know.
But you can recognize there might be a point in the near future where we might have an idea.
And if they do, good, I'd love to be a part of that.
Curry's ankles have been rehabilitated because he did a very specific training regimen.
So are we sure that's why?
Pablo Torre did a piece. It's interesting.
Who?
I'm Pablo Torre in ESPN the magazine. Our
Is he a
colleague,
doctor?
who's awesome.
Is he a doctor?
No, he's not a doctor.
Oh, I
but
thought he was a doctor. I'm sorry, I don't know.
But he's a guy who delves. All right. So what if we can say, look, I mean, he has paid attention, and you know, the P3 guys will say, hips are vital, and that he has rehabilitated those ankles based on a certain regimen, based on biometrics and other training measures. Let me go to this though. How invasive is too invasive? Do you want to spit into a cup? If I could tell you.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm so happy I'm retired and out before they found out that I drank 2 bottles of wine on my off night.
Okay.
All right.
See, I want
don't
that guy. So, but see, like, there's like you're not going to have all milk drinkers. Like, I want the wine drinker down there because he came ready to practice and play. You know, I mean, a lot of it is like, do you love to compete? Like, I would say more than, and I'm glad that we've said hips are important because I got hips, so I'm happy about that. But like, here's the thing. I was just reading this lady here in Boston, Ellen Winter, I think her name is. They were talking about Bryce Harper, how great he was. And he has the rage to master his craft. Not anger to master, but rage, like he's persistent. That's much more, I would say Curry's persistence to be great is every bit as important as what program he's on. Like he might have been chugging 2 bottles of wine at night, but he was coming ready to practice and play, as was all the great players. I don't think you can get away from mental makeup that has nothing to do with the necessarily the program that we put them on. I mean, cause and effect, I think, is so hard to determine.
2 bottles?
I'm a big guy, Kevin. I'm a big guy. Well, you know, my fear with the analytics was that, yeah, there's a chance it could help me. It could enhance my career. I was skeptical of that, but I was also much more fearful that that information that they found out about me was going to use to depress my value and depress my earning opportunity, because the window is small and short. And if a GM can find a reason to depress my value, he will. It's called capitalism.
Let me ask you a different question, ethical question. We're doing these inertia sensors now, the catapult stuff. Who owns that data, the player or the team?
Team, I think.
Or who should?
It's public good, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. Sue, how invasive is too invasive? If I said, hey, you do this 10 minutes when you come to training, so we can help you achieve a level of health superior to the one you have now. Not for any failing of you, but it can tell us, it can tell you, it can give you certain indicators that will help your training
I think
regimen.
it's up to the player, what they're willing to do and not do. I mean, I've been in situations with, players' weight. And obviously for females, that's a very touchy subject. And it negatively affected people. They were just trying to help. They were just trying to get her to lose weight so she could be more, and it negatively affected everything. So to me, is it worth that? I don't know. So I think it's up to the player and what they'd want to know.
I mean, we always did body fat testing, and if you were too fat, you rode a bike forever, No, I mean, if you're over your body fat or over your
But
weight.
that's analytics. That's helping.
I don't. I mean, then Pat Riley was at the forefront of analytics. He crush guys for their weight and body fat. But I mean, is that analytics?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Body fat index. I mean, or body mass, which is not a great one, but I mean, they're ones that are more precise.
Okay.
Let's take some questions. Do players tailor their training to skills valued in free agency? Are they aware of skills that get paid?
No.
Ooh, really?
No.
I think they think their skills are worth getting paid for. They don't care otherwise.
Because there are anecdotes that their
Yeah.
players, there are anecdotes and there's some analysis that suggests that they do. Because at least for historically, points got you paid. So there is some evidence for that statistically.
Well, I don't know a player that doesn't work on extending their range. Okay? And that's probably the quickest way to increase your point per game. I don't think that's based on any analytic. I want to shoot better. Because if I shoot better, I'm going to play in the fourth quarter. And if I play in the fourth quarter, I'm valuable. Someone will pay me more.
The implication is that sometimes it'll be selfish, that you're taking shots away from other guys that may be higher percentage for them than for you. And there is some evidence for that.
Not in women's
All right.
I would tend to agree that 98% of players probably don't do that.
I wouldn't say it's a conscious thing, though, to say, you know what, I really need to work on my left-handed jump hook. That will make me better, and I'll get paid more.
Unless someone specifically told them that. Because in women's basketball also, we're playing year-round. You're constantly in a season. Good luck trying to add anything while you're trying to win games. It's very difficult to do that. So you're constantly, from one game to the next, it's very difficult. So unless a coach said to you in some sort of report card situation or exit interview, hey, listen, you need to add the left jump hook.
And look,
I don't see anyone doing
the
that.
only way you improve in the NBA is if you have a leash, that you can fail and still have the opportunity to do it again in a game. All right? You may have the world's greatest player development coach, and you may look great in warm-ups and post-practice and pre-practice, but until you can translate that skill into a game, you will not improve.
That's a good point.
This is for Jeff. How has your mentality toward advanced metrics changed since coaching the Rockets between 2004 and 2007?
I want anything to help me win. So I think I was very open. Now, I would also challenge the validity of some of the stats as well. But listen, as a coach, you're the most selfish guy in the room because all you care about is winning. And so if there is a piece of information that can help you, you're all for it. I'm just not as willing to, because I don't know what, and there he comes, the master of information, right? All right, there he goes. I was not willing to just accept, for instance, spitting in a cup is going to translate into winning. I'm going to question that the information we get may be good for us and harmful to the overall result. And so I'm not smart enough to know all the stats and all that, but I think I do know what goes into winning and losing in the NBA. And if anything can help you win, I'm all for it.
I'll put this to Sue. Last year, the Mystics did an analytics scrimmage. What was the reaction around the league, and what's next for the WNBA?
Yeah, they did that scrimmage where, I don't even remember exactly.
What's that mean, first?
They couldn't, it's like they couldn't shoot, or if they shot a jump shot, like a long range jumper, they didn't get the points, but they got like extra points for the three. It was like something to get them to try to, I know, it was, so I think it was stupid, truthfully.
Okay.
Like what is it? So to me, it's like all of this has some sort of like line. There's like some sort of endpoint to all of this, in my opinion. It's like, if the game's on the line and there's 0.2 seconds and you got to foul a guy, right? Obviously, or a woman, obviously you might look at the stats and be like, oh, Jeff shoots 50%, foul him. But then it's like at the same time, I've seen 90%. Buddy Hield just missed a free throw like a couple weeks ago. Game on the line against Kansas. And he's like a 99.9% free throw shooter and he missed. So it's like there's always those moments where none of this matters. So I just think there's always a line. So like the analytics scrimmage, Simone Augustus is one of the best jump shooters, male or female, that I've ever seen. She doesn't shoot threes. She can get to the rack a little bit. She's got a nice little floater. But it's like, it's her pull-up J where she's money. Why would you want a situation where she plays for Minnesota, and Minnesota also played against Washington in that scrimmage? Why would you want a situation where she's not looking to do that? So I just think there's always like an end point. And it's who can maximize up to that point, but then like something else takes over after that. Like clutch. How do you put clutch into analytics? Clutch is the guy who missed his first 20 shots and still has the balls to take the last one.
Shane, do you see the NBA's three-point revolution having a negative trickle-down effect on college ball?
Well, first of all, my son, who's 7 years old, all right, I go to his game. He is pulling up from 3 feet behind the line, all right? He and his buddies are pulling up, and everyone's saying, no, 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 no. Yes, because they make these shots.
Is this Steph Curry
not
ruining
just college.
basketball?
This is down to 7-year-old YMCA South Dade kiddie ball. This is the revolution. You know, I love three-pointers. I don't think you can take enough of three-pointers, all right? It may not be as aesthetically pleasing, and you lose some of the really athletic plays in the game, but it's here, and the numbers back it up. Back it up.
In the future NBA, will there be any offense that's not simply 4 on the perimeter and 1 big?
Sure, you're seeing it with San Antonio right now. I mean, it goes, and Sue was talking about it, it goes back to your roster. You're going to do, the whole point of offense is to get the best quality shot you can without turning it over. And so, depending on who you have on your team, you know, and this is why I think coaches, organizations, and fans say, when they say, you should play like another team, they're making a huge mistake. You should play to the best that you can maximize your talent. So yes, San Antonio is showing right now that you can play good offense with 2 bigs on the floor. Memphis at times, their best team to win was 2 bigs. So I think it comes down to roster construction.
And I think that's actually one of the most important underplayed aspects of analytics is most people talk about, oh, shoot more threes and get to the rim and stuff. And the most important aspect of what we do is customizing what we do to the players that we have. And if you're not doing that, you're going to waste the players that you have. You're going to sign the wrong players. And so that is the hard work. It's not the sexy work. The sexy work is shoot threes and layups.
In other words, your position with Golden State would be completely different than your position with Memphis.
Absolutely. Okay. It better be.
Let's see. Could allowing players to view the medical data first and have the choice to share it remove the stigma, Shane?
Yeah, if I had a heart condition, I think I'd want to know. If I had a knee condition that makes me more susceptible to ACL tears, I'd like to know. But again, I wouldn't want that information public. Anything that was negative, it'd be great for me personally. I would not want it out there professionally because that would do nothing but depress my value.
But I mean, the teams have that right now. It's physicals. You know, they have a lot of information on these, you know, players that go directly to depressing value.
It disappeared, but it was a good question. How many fights with Daryl did you get in over this stuff?
Well, no, it's not fights. It's like, yeah, Scott Padgett's a good one.
Okay.
And he was a three-point shooter, but they wanted me to play Novak. And they thought that if Scott Padgett was on the roster, I wouldn't play Novak. So I think, did we cut Scott Padgett?
Yeah.
We cut Scott Padgett, and I still didn't play Novak. So it was like, you know, I started my first game of the year, because in preseason, I had gotten into this thing like, Novak, God, he really can shoot. And then we went to Utah in the first half, and Boozer had him bend over and got about 12 offensive rebounds. And I said, well, I won't say what I said. I said, Chuck Hayes, all right, we just went back to two bigs, you know. So, yeah. So I guess, but it was usually over player. It wasn't his information. To me, Flip Saunders used to always say this to me: the truth is not controversial. So if he's presenting a number as a fact, I may dispute how that number was. Like, I'm not sure I always trusted the people that were charting stuff. You know, when they tell me stuff that I know with my own two eyes, I'm seeing on film doesn't equate. I might have had a bigger issue sometimes with how it was put together, but the information wasn't ever a problem. It was then, I think, how you use the information, you know, or is this guy good enough to win a championship with? We had a couple discussions about a player who was our third guard. Was he good enough? And, you know, you can get, those are opinions. But the truth, the facts, I never had a problem with the facts. It was actually very, very helpful. And when I say volumes, the stuff he gave to me as a coach before every game was very workable.
How about lineup data, when it maybe flew in the face of what you felt in terms of your gut?
So again, I think it helped. I think what it really helps, all of it helps, is it makes you think about what you believe and why you believe it, and then you go full circle to come back. If they question you and you question yourself, then you have to come up with answers. Why do I believe what I believe? Juwan Howard was an example of a mid-range jump shooter that sparked a lot of discussion in how much he should play, should he start, And I thought it was very helpful.
Dean, how much has SportView data changed scouting reports?
I think it's added, actually, it's good and bad. It's added a lot of extra numbers and extra plots and all sorts of things that I think need to be filtered down before they go to the coaching staff. But I think there is extra information that was hard to get out of other things before. Certainly, you know much better where guys come off the pick and roll and whether they get the ball passed to them in those situations. But you need to filter it down. As I say, you just don't have a lot of time to convey all the potential things that come out of that.
What was the bad?
Bad is just it takes a lot of time to filter it down to something that's useful, because I don't want you guys spending all your time working through all that. It's
Exactly. You got to give a coach like information that is relevant to winning.
Yeah.
I mean, just to throw numbers at, it's like the lineup stuff. Well, if you have a better option, and it goes back to what Sue said, roster construction. If you have a better option, that's great. You can say something's not working, but that doesn't mean you have a better option.
Dean, how do you use analytics as a predictive tool for comparing college and international prospects?
So you have a long history of international players, and you have a long history of college players and what they've done in the NBA, but it's not one simple formula. It's because a lot of people ask, what are you trying to predict? For a team that needs somebody right now, you may be trying to predict that first year, that first 2 years. Other times, okay, we can wait. We want to predict someone who's going to be good in their 5th, 6th year, really good. And then there's also the elements of uncertainty, which we don't talk about, even though analytics is fundamentally about uncertainty. Are you trying to get the guy with the best upside, which is standard code words for uncertainty on the high end, or do you want to avoid the risk? with the guys on the downside.
All right. Last question for all of you. What is your personal life hack? Is the head of your bed facing north? Do you have certain theories moving through traffic in your city? I'm just going to close on that, your own personal life hack.
I don't think I have.
We'll start with you, Shane.
What's my personal life hack? I find that when I agree with my wife on her theories, life is much easier and better.
Okay.
That's a really good one.
I don't know if I have a life hack. I'm borderline OCD, so I definitely don't necessarily have a hack, but I have a pattern of
Are you a napper?
yes,
game
I'm
day?
a napper. Yes, I coffee nap.
People, this is the third person who's told me about the coffee nap.
How deep do you want me to get in this explanation? Basically, you drink a cup of coffee, you shut it down, like lights, phone off, everything. You set your alarm for 20, 30 minutes. You nap, you wake up, and you get the benefit of the caffeine and the nap at the same time.
I don't understand that one.
Coffee nap.
Biometrics on
That's a
that.
life hack.
I don't know.
I don't do the 2-hour nap anymore. I do the straight up 20, 30-minute coffee nap.
you're
It's like something about chemicals and the caffeine and the nap and the clearing and it's in the Webster's dictionary somewhere.
Jeff, your analytics life hack?
So what's that mean, life hack?
What do you do? Is there something you do to enhance your performance?
That's invasive right there. That's invasive.
In your day-to-day life?
I eat a donut after I work out.
He's avoiding the question, I think. You're asking me now?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
I'm actually one of the believers in do something hard, do something that scares you every day. I definitely try to do that, for sure.
All right. That's player analytics.
Oh, funny.